everybody. Oh.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I'm short and can't get into school. Please excuse me. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Woo!
Let me open my iPad, introduce our folks.
Okay, I'm just going to jump right in so we can have as much time with the panelists as possible. Chef Telly Justice is a proud trans woman who has worked in the food industry for over a decade, from anarchist vegan cafes to Michelin-starred restaurants. Her flagship restaurant, Hags, in the East Village centers queerness and features flamboyant tasting menus as well as inclusive pay-what-you-can meals. Are we calling each person out or just reading everyone's bios? Come on down. Okay.
How's this work? Is this working? No?
No.
Hello? Hi.
Oh, there you go. Look at you being tall and can sit right down. What's that like? Okay. Gabrielle Inès Souza is the executive director of the Okra Project, a mutual aid collective focused on supporting the Black trans community. She spearheads sustainable and holistic initiatives that address food insecurity, housing assistance, and mental health support for Black transgender people across the U.S. Come on down. Hello and welcome. Everyone's tall. Skylar Mosca is a trans non-binary chef, currently the executive chef of Sailor in Fort Greene. They were recently featured in the immersive culinary pop-up series, The Lineup, as well as Star Chef's 2025 New York Rising Stars issue. They are passionate about creating community and mentoring queer and trans chefs. Skylar, come on down.
I'm just gonna say hi. I'm gonna turn it on here.
Last but certainly not least, Luna Vela is a chef molinera. Oh, I should have asked you how to say this word, I'm so sorry. An anthropologist from northern Mexico, now based in Austin, Texas. She is the founder of Neighborhood Molino, a community mill and cultural space dedicated to preserving native food traditions through queer, intuitive lens, and has previously served as director of masa and fermentation for several award-winning restaurants. Luna! Don't forget your microphone. Okay, we're here. So before I jump into the panel, and I don't know, I couldn't really hear the intro, so forgive me if this is a repeat, but the world is really heavy outside these walls. We were talking about it in the green room, and so I'd love to just take like 10 seconds and take a deep breath and leave all of that outside so we can enjoy each other's company in here. It'll be there waiting for us as soon as this panel's over, don't worry. But try to just put it down for now, and so we can be present with each other. So deep breath in, and out. Okay, thanks. So how did you get here? And not like, did you take a car or a train, but what has been part of your life's inspiration that put you on the path to get you in this chair right now?
Really? Telly.
The microphone's giving me trouble. I'll just talk. This one on?
Hello?
Okay. We'll figure that one out. Food was not a major part of my upbringing, wasn't a major part of my life until I was a teenager. And that was late for me to realize that cooking and grocery shopping and developing self-sustaining tools were a necessary part of survival when you find yourself in a resourceless position, and especially being young and coming out as queer and doing so in Columbia, South Carolina, which was a tough place to be at the time, and I'm sure is today. I realized that drawing community closer to me and understanding the power of asking for help and leaning on people when you felt most vulnerable and most, at odds with the world. Sometimes it's as simple as just going to a potluck and sharing a plate of food. And that's kind of where I started to take food seriously as a passion project, as something that I could share with people like me that looked like me or looked like how I wanted to look. And I think that that's an unusual entry point into the professional kitchen and fine dining restaurants. But I think, like so many of us that come from a restaurant background, we find this kind of like incomplete part of ourselves that we want to fill with perfectionism and craft and the development of skill. It was a difficult road to realize that kind of takes you away from the things that are most important and the community that was inspiring in the first place. So over the years, finding ways to creatively and subtly, and then eventually not so subtly, refocus the significance of queer identity and queer spaces, and sharing food with queer people, teaching queer people how to cook for themselves, and just also sharing like the restorative queer meal has been a big part of why we open Hags and why I think it still is a very fulfilling project for me today.
Thank you. Is anyone else feeling inspired to answer?
Are we just gonna move down the line?
Sure.
This one's out, I think.
Okay.
How did I get here? That is a good question. That's something that I ask myself every day when I look in the mirror, honestly. I got here through the power of community. I come from a background in healthcare, but I worked in the restaurant industry, and I think that was my first real taste of what community could be and what it felt like, especially as a Black trans woman growing up in the Midwest and the South.
They're dying down the line.
It might be better just to share this one.
Okay.
If these are, I'm so sorry. It's technical difficulties.
Growing up in the Midwest and South as a Black trans woman, I felt the heavy weight of like being alone. I wasn't close to my family. My family didn't understand me, but I found community in the food space, in the restaurant space. I made friends. Of course, your team becomes your family. We support each other through that way. And then when I medically transitioned, I then connected with other trans and queer people in my respective areas. And what I found was that we shared a lot of our stories and our passions and our togetherness through shared food experiences. So it was like us cooking for each other, doing meals and potlucks and things like that, which continues in Black trans and queer spaces, and it's really rooted in the work that we do at the Okra Project. And so when I started working with Okra back in 2020, the Okra Project was founded upon that mission of hiring Black trans and queer chefs, and during COVID, providing meals to Black trans and queer people. We really stayed within the bounds of what that was and what that meant for community and for us. And then we just expanded it to even more resources and really just holding it in that way. So that's how I got here, and that's why I'm here with y'all, beautiful people.
I think the theme here is I feel like the kitchen is a place for it's a refuge for misfits. People are. I think the queer community, especially I'm from the Midwest as well, and some people think it's the South, but it's Missouri. It's not. It's not the South. But it was hard. I grew up on a small farm, and I don't learn by sitting and listening, and I needed to be moving and using my hands, and I felt like I needed a creative outlet, and I ended up being a dishwasher at a Irish pub that sold pizza. So I learned how to make like trash cans full of pizza dough, and the crew there was just like people with tattoos and just didn't give a fuck about what they looked like, who you were, and I washed dishes and I worked hard and I felt good about it, and it felt like I found, even if they weren't queer that I was aware of at the time, they accepted me before I accepted me. So I think to jump on the bandwagon of community, I found some people who accepted me and I worked really hard and ended up in New York, cooking for some amazing, strong women, chefs who are queer, and that's led me here.
I think there's like so many overlaps in like every story of like how we find ourselves in the kitchen, how we like find queer community through the act of like sharing food. But I think for me, like specifically, like what got me like first like to start working in food was that I couldn't get a job anywhere else. Like I like migrated from North Mexico to Texas, and the only jobs that I was able to get were like in the kitchen, like working at the table, and like just figuring out like that path. So I remember just like working myself through school, like right after I graduated high school and like through college, and just being put in like touch with a lot of different communities that were kind of undergoing a lot of the same, you know, struggles. And it's like hard for me right now because it's, I know we took a deep breath, but it's still very present. And it's been like 8 years of navigating a lot of these spaces, and a lot of the kitchens that I worked in were Mexican kitchens, and obviously like it's my community that's all there, and it took me a while like of being in these spaces of like finding my own queerness within it too, just because it's like navigating the machismo aspects of like Latino culture and, you know, just like ethnic culture. So I think it took a long journey to find more community that was like me, and it's kind of why I'm here in New York too right now, just because in Texas things are a little bit like spicier. But being in a room like this kind of gives me hope for the future.
I'm gonna ask a question that I didn't write on our run of show. I hope that's okay. So just based on all of what I've heard, it sounds like food is a catalyst for community. And so I'm curious, Skylar, you were talking about how the folks in your space like didn't give a fuck and they just were like there to support. I'm curious how in other ways are kitchens or food spaces catalysts for community compared to other ways like sports. I don't know why sports is the first thing. Or like theater, or you know, other kinds of places where there are groups. So what is it about food specifically that provided you this space?
I think with a restaurant, it's a crazy hard job, and like Luna's expressing, not everyone's gonna do that job. We go in there as a team and we have to work together to make it happen. You know, whether it's the chef, the person that is speaking to you about the food or wine, or who designed the room, it takes a whole team and you're all in it together. And I think that aspect, you lean on each other in really hard times and you support each other through service. And I don't know how many times I've walked out of a restaurant and cried and somebody's been there and been like, hey man, what's up, you know? And just the mentors that you get, and man, the people that I've met have changed my life and how I perceive. I come from probably one of the widest parts of the United States, and my chosen family is all different people.
I had a uniquely different experience. I'm sure a lot of people that enter kitchens, there is a luck of the draw element, and there are different through lines that connect you to the right people and to the wrong people. And I think I was in a lot of situations that felt impossible to conquer and impossible to participate in. I struggled to find mentorship, and I struggled to feel present in those spaces. And I think that in those moments, there was always a nagging realization that kitchens aren't this way. This isn't what it's like to cook food. This isn't food at all. It's not in the effort to share or nourish. It is in the effort to dominate or impress. And having the resource of the memories of cooking queer potlucks as a teenager and having that come before the professional kitchen. I think that I spent a lot of years fantasizing and daydreaming about what could exist. And I think that something more beautiful and better can exist for the restaurant kitchen. I think that we can build it. And I think that there are beautiful kitchens out there that are currently supporting people. And if you're lucky enough to find them, that is an incredible privilege. And if you're lucky enough to build them, that is an even bigger privilege. So I think about it a lot. I think about it every day.
I was hoping it would work, but it's not. Oh, yeah, thank you.
The question was, what is it about working in a kitchen and around food, like a catalyst for building community, like different than other kinds of group spaces?
I think the fact that you are forced to like sit down with people and have conversations and kind of share like a lot of different parts of yourself. I think there's like a great amount of unfolding that happens in that. Like in restaurants we have what's like family meal, which is just like the moment to sit down before you get into service. And it's a moment of like compression and doing all these things. And I think when you have like a predominantly queer staff or like other like queer friends that you're working with and building this world with, like you're constantly having this like potluck moment of just like dreaming and just like what is the purpose of doing this and like putting your heart out there. So I think that's something that is kind of unique to it, and then the fact that you're continuously like having to pour your heart out for people that you don't know if they're gonna like receive the love that you're putting out, I think is like another big part. And yeah, like I don't know, when you have like a restaurant that serves like a, you know, like in Texas I do a lot of indigenous and Mexican cooking, and then we're having to serve like white people, and it's like, are they gonna get this? Do they get like these like nuances? And like then it's like, okay, I'm like not even that layer, but it's gonna be like a white cis straight person coming in because they think it's trendy, but it's like they're eating my heart. So I think that's like layers that people don't really get in other spaces, but it's maybe, you know, similar with other art forms as well.
Thank you, all of you. Panel's over, just kidding. And also, I don't know if they said this earlier, but there will be time for questions, so just wanted to remind you all of that. So this question is specifically for Gabrielle. What does, and then other folks can answer as it relates to you, what does sharing a meal mean in the Black Midwest/South for you?
You know, I think many of us also on this panel probably looked at the questions on the sheet and like did our notes. I have like my notes, but what comes to mind also just that wasn't on my notes and hearing that question is it's communion. And I think back to, again, growing up in Houma, Louisiana and New Orleans, and after church on Sundays, you know, the family would come over and we would get together and we would share a meal, and all the women would get together and cook meals. And I, at that time, was figuring out what womanhood felt and looked like to me, and really like learning through that lens through the women in the kitchen and shared recipes that I keep with me now, and thinking about my grandmother who, you know, we talked about back there that I need to, you know, I try to visit every summer, but it's communion, it's gathering, it's sharing of stories and traditions and things like that, which just is so powerful. And I think that as we move through the questions, I also want to say that a lot of these questions I'm going to answer, I'm answering it through a Black femme lens, and how powerful that is too for me, in deciphering, womanhood and connection to family and building my own now and taking those traditions with me. So that's what it means to me. It's communion, it's church, it's everything.
Obviously, I need to speak to a white experience, and I think that has a lot to do with why food was not a significant part of my upbringing. I think that I didn't have a cultural moment or a cultural cuisine that felt central to my experience, and it took me a long time to understand what food could be. And that's why I feel so indebted to the queer community. I think that's a special experience, and especially the queer community in the South, which is a special phenomenon.
Is Texas the South to y'all? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, queer food in the South just feels unique and special. It's like full of soul, in so many different aspects. And the matriarchs that come from our families, and they're the knowledge holders, and I feel like I've been mothered so many times by all the women in the kitchen that I've ever worked with. And beyond any famous chef that I've worked for, I've learned so much more from any single matriarch.
Thank you. Excuse me. So I'm gonna, Skylar, ask you a question and then expand it out for other folks. But Skylar, what's a mantra that you hold with you daily that you've learned from a mentor or a colleague that encompasses the kind of artist and community member you strive to be? And then for everyone else, if it's not a mantra, is there something else that you, some kind of skill or something that's meaningful for you that you've gleaned from a mentor?
Yeah, so I think I've many things, so many things, but one that I really carry with me every day is that has something direct with your ego, which is so generally rampant in a kitchen. Is that you can learn something from anyone at any time, no matter who it is, whether it's your chef, the dishwasher. I've learned so much from so many dishwashers on how to fix something, how to make something better. And I think thinking about that every day and as you rise in a ladder of whatever industry, corporate or not, that it keeps you humble to it, and also it keeps you in touch with the employee and yourself. And I say it has a touch to ego because ego can be so easily bloated in our industry and bruised. And I try to remind myself that. And there's a second part of this, if that's okay. Is Telly. That's not a mantra. Telly and I have become friends, and I want to say that just Telly as a person has been very genuine and open and kind, and has allowed time that she doesn't have to me, and it has made me feel less resistant to others in our community, not in queer and outside of the queer community, to be more open to people. And I think that's really important to remember right now, especially.
Yeah.
If there's a mantra or some other kind of pearl of wisdom that you've gleaned from a mentor.
That I've learned from a mentor.
Yeah.
I think
I want to talk about the ego piece that you touched on, and as someone who is not working in a kitchen currently, I'm also speaking from a more executive position with an organization that provides food and resources to community. But I think sometimes, and things that I just see in activism spaces, is a lot of times the executives, we are kind of platformed in this way, that we are seen as the voices and the mouthpieces and things like that. But I will say one thing that keeps me humble and one thing that I have learned is making sure to stay connected to community. And I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with Black Trans Liberation Kitchen, headed by my sister Queen Jean, every Wednesday at Judson Memorial Church. Working with them in the kitchen keeps me humble, it keeps me grounded, it also keeps me connected to community. And it helps me gauge like what my community needs as far as the services and the resources. And so it keeps me humble, it keeps personhood, and it just reminds me of the importance of what I do, what we're doing, and the importance of conversations like this.
I've been sitting here this whole time trying to think of a mantra really quick, and I don't know that one is springing to mind. But I'm so deeply moved and touched to be on this panel with this group of people. I think the thing that I've been really emotional today. It's shot day. One of the things that just grows bigger and bigger for me as I get deeper into this is holding people that make you feel larger, closer, and doing this with this group of people. Luna was just in our kitchen this week. I've spent a lot of time with Skylar recently, and I may not have prime mantras to lean on, but I listen to these people that I trust and care about, and they inform a lot of what we do. So I think that's a good place to start.
I don't know if this, I'm gonna butcher it, but someone like recently told me that like people are portals, and to just like go with the ones that lead you to like, that make you feel loved, and that through that like new worlds will open up. And it kind of goes in the same realm of like the path of least resistance, and it's just one of these things that one of my really good friends told me, and I think about it all the time, and I think of all the people that I've brought in to like collaborate with, work with, share space with, and know that just by being in rooms like this and being around people that inspire me and that are building really beautiful futures, that we're like in a portal together, just like creating these worlds.
It's beautiful. I'm just thinking about all the themes that are coming up here around like friendship and caring and staying grounded and connecting with community, and it's all just really it's beautiful. And I want to just shift gears a little bit and have a question for Luna and then also for all of you. How does transness force you or invite you to reimagine the existing systems of service and operating in this world?
I had put the question like wanting everyone else to answer it.
Ask the mic then.
Cool.
Sick. All right. I think just inherently I felt different as a kid, and I think that has always just forced me to see things differently. I think it we can talk about code switching, we can talk about how it is to live as a queer person, a person of color, all of these things. I think just when you're different, I'm gonna say different of what society is telling you or saying is normal and putting you in this production, that it forces you to find your own way, hopefully, It is, I think, also opens you up to a lot more creativity and feeling and empathy. There's a lot of pain in that, but I think through all of that, it makes you look at the world just differently. I hope that answers your question.
I think a lot about building a space and using this craft and being a chef in a restaurant through the lens of creating a place where I'm equal to the rest of the people around me. Equal is the best thing we can be. And so opening a space of collaboration where everybody feels like they can contribute, where their values and their voices are equal to mine and can confront mine and change mine is really powerful. Feeling equal to the diners in the dining room is powerful. And investigating how to build that, how to make a dining room more accessible to people like me and people that are not like me. And seeking out and highlighting the voice that is being kind of hidden in the corner or silenced or made small, and putting a microphone in front of it, I think is an important way to orient a space towards something that feels accessible to us as trans people, as queer people, as people that have a lot of experience feeling different and other in so many rooms. And I think that at HAGS we do a lot to ensure that whatever world a person brings into that space, they, at least in that place, can feel heard and seen, valid, like a worthy contributor and just a worthy person.
Sure. For me, I think that it's forced me to look into all the nooks and crannies like of myself and like life, and I think of like all the work that I do, you know, accessibility to like the services that I provide, whether it's like doing a dinner somewhere or educational workshops. Like a lot of the work that I do is for directly with my community, and it's like, you know, how can we always like have things that are free, accessible, and it's things that I feel like other people don't really have to think about because like their communities usually have access to more resources. So it's constantly figuring out like creative ways of like finding funding or just navigating things in a way that I don't see a lot of other people have that same pressure to. So I think that's it.
So just staying connected to community and finding ways to make things accessible, because I think, you know, I'll speak for myself as a trans person, and a lot of you have already brought this up of, you know, sometimes not feeling like the world is accessible because we are different. We were told that we were different, and I struggled to find a lot of space, any space where I felt like I fit in. And so finding community, finding spaces that have proactively thought about how we can belong is super incredible and important. So it's not over, but I just wanted to thank you all for doing the work, for creating spaces of belonging for folks through food, however whether you're cooking or providing, well, you're all providing, but you know the difference. Here we go. How can non-trans folks support, uplift, celebrate trans and non-binary folks within the food community?
I would say invest, you know, I'm not talking about money necessarily. I'm talking about your time, your attention, your empathy. Invest, give it thought. I mean, I think I'm talking to a group of people that already do, but I feel we just have to think about each other. I think more important is how I feel. Investing time and an intentionality, and I think art is a huge part of it, whatever it is. Whether it's theater, music, food, supporting others, it's a lot of things.
I think that you touched on something, and I think one of the things that you were ultimately saying and that spoke out to me is like moving from action into solidarity. So that means like, you know, I'm not sure who has access when we're talking about like resources and things like that, who has access to kitchens and restaurants, but it's hiring us, it's paying us well, it's supporting us, you know. I have some other notes here too. And it's understanding that food for trans people is survival. For many of us, food is not just culture. It's a luxury. It's medicine. It's care. It's how we've stayed alive. Through times of injustice, and it's how we keep each other alive as well. And so I think that's important. And then centering joy and dignity in all of that, and everything that we do when it's surrounding like food and service work and things like that. And not tokenizing us. I find in a lot of spaces we're often tokenized, and I think you had spoke to that, Telly, is like, not feeling safe in the kitchen, because a lot of that is like tokenization when you think about it. And it's like, I think one of the things that stood out, I think, was, and maybe you'll get to this later, Dubbs, but like, how do we queer space and things like that. But I personally have never ever wanted to trans or queer space, because I'm gonna show up and you're gonna respect me, and you're gonna respect what I bring to the table, what I bring to the kitchen, to the business table, whatever it is, to the board meeting, you're gonna respect me, regardless of my identity. And so that is what I lead with in that way.
I think complementary to what you've spoken to, show up and keep showing up and keep showing up and keep showing up. I think that is one of the hardest things to encourage cis people to recognize is, trans artists need you to go to their exhibits. Trans chefs need you in their restaurant. Trans businesses need your investment. They need you to buy their product. Trans marches need you to be there and in them. Your trans friend needs you to be a good friend. Just show up and keep showing up and be consistent in your show up.
Yeah, June is gonna keep going on year round. I feel like we experience a lot of just this high impact thing of oh, you're getting booked all of June, and then July and August everyone kind of forgot about you. So I mean it's that, it's consistent, our work speaks for itself. We don't have to keep advertising it over and over to so it sucks to have to sell your queerness or your transness. I don't like doing that. Even though we do want to create these spaces, it's our work, regardless of our identities, has a lot of value. And I think that it's the constant tokenization, when you enter a space, and it's we want to be joyous about it and chill, but some people are not chill.
How do you queer food? It's a real question.
I think, every queer person has a unique and individual relationship to their food and the food they share with other people and the food they receive from their community. And there is no wrong way to queer food. I think we can all bring something of ourselves to our food practices. Even if you're not in this industry, even if you don't care that much about food, there's something that you can do to queer it, whether it's just, hosting that potluck, or going to the potluck, or going to a queer restaurant, a queer pop-up. I think that from our angle at HAGS, what I do is kind of trying to hold two worlds, one that is centering the excellence of queer cooks and the mentorship of a professional kitchen, and how do we do something that encourages a feeling of joy and celebration, and can mark experiences in a beautiful way, and can platform other people that are trying to do similar work. And also, how do we make celebrational cuisine accessible to a larger group of people? How do we kind of encourage more sliding scale and free meal programs that are not just food from dumpsters? I think there are a million ways to center the things that you value and the ethos that you hold near and dear to you, and do that, bring that into the world. I think
the four of us have found our unique way of bringing that practice and manifesting it. But when we start to build a more calcified vision of what queer food is, we lose so much. So I think we have to keep it loose and infinite and individual.
Cannot agree more. I think that queering food for me is so rooted in the work that I do. Is creating these webs of support and resources and access to healthy food. When I'm thinking about specific programming that we do at the Oprah Project around food, and it's really meeting our community and letting them decide what it is that they want. I think about when you think about government programs, right? There's just so much surveillance around it. And so that's not really access, right? If you're gonna surveillance what I can get, and I'm thinking about WIC and things like that people are on, and food stamps and how they police what you can buy and so forth, and it's just very nasty work. But thinking about creating webs of access to healthy items and things. I live in Brooklyn. Dubbs, you and I have had this conversation about sometimes I feel that through gentrification in certain neighborhoods in Brooklyn, it is a food desert, but you can go out to Dumbo or Clinton Hill, and they have the nice stores and the Wegmans, and just thinking about that. And it's just, again, sitting in community, creating spaces with one another, creating spaces for one another, and with one another, and sharing those meals and passing down recipes. I'm thinking about sharing recipes with my sisters and my brothers and things like that, and just keeping it going. And again, like I said, creating webs of what it is to be medicinal food, therapy in its purest form. So yeah.
I was thinking about this a lot, queer food, queering food, and I wish that it wasn't so pinched, I guess. I think this speaks to what both of you are saying, that I think about Southern food, right? And how much there is underneath that umbrella of Southern food. You have a Southern chef. That doesn't mean that Southern chef is going to cook exactly what another Southern chef is going to cook. That means different things, and that's queer food, right? We're all chefs and artists doing different things that are, like Luna said, you're eating our heart. It's very vulnerable to create and hope that you like it and hope that you want to buy it again, and then also to bring you into a space that feels full of love and equality and just feeling that community. And it feels almost silly to have to put it into queer food. I feel like that should be pretty much across the board, just as a human. So I hope that queer food becomes less pinched. I hope it becomes more like Southern food. So it's more encompassing, and it's all around. It is all around. We just don't talk about it, and we don't have enough space and money and time to make it. But I think you're seeing starts of it right here.
Yeah, I love what y'all said, and I think it's for me, I see it in these two beautiful ways, right? It's queer food as in the accessibility and survival aspect of it, of what does our community need to be in community with each other and feed one another and nourish each other, and points of access of it, and then the creative part of it, what does creative queer food also look like? Because it's cultural. Queer is a culture, and it's how are we expressing ourselves throughout it? And it's there's so many different expressions of it throughout every single other umbrella culture. So I see it in a lot of ways. In Texas, a lot of the work is bringing indigenous foodways back to queer two-spirit community, and it's how can we have the people that have gathered all this knowledge practice or craft in a way that they feel safe and celebrated with. And then it's then where does the creativity come? Once the survival is taken care of, then how can you then thrive within it and express yourself in a way that is beautiful. Like seeing a space like Hags was great because it was so beautiful to see like a space where the basic needs were met and we have this beautiful produce and then we can express like our creativity in that way. But it takes like having just the minimum like taken care of to get to that point. And I think there's not many examples of it. And it's exciting to see more.
Just the themes, y'all. Like accessibility, creativity, vulnerability, heart. Just keeps popping up because it's queer. That is what queer is. Okay, so before we move into the Q&A portion, Telly, this was yours and I love it, and all of you, please also feel free to answer. What inspires you to keep going, and who in your community inspires you?
You know, I said it earlier, but obviously I feel so incredibly inspired by the three of y'all on this panel and feel so incredibly lucky to participate in this. I think it's monumental that for how many are it? 5 trans people are talking to each other at a museum. That is so cool. That is so cool. I don't think I could have dreamt of this as a young person. It's incredible to see and participate in. And thank you for coming out. Like, it's so cool to see a room full of people at an event like this. So I feel so inspired by this, by y'all. I feel so inspired by the team at Hags. They're so supportive and they're so hardworking and they show up in so many incredible ways and push me to be a better person and leader in so many ways. They've made me a better chef. And you can't ask for more than that, I think, when you are doing this work. I think that it can become very isolating work and it can become very demoralizing, as I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the reality of making so little money and working on your feet for so long, feeling so broken and at the result of so much sacrifice, to get to go into a place that I work and feel like I can be myself and everybody around me is able to be themselves and contribute is so inspiring. It's fulfilling in so many ways. So yeah, themes. I think community is such a wellspring of inspiration. I think it's the reason why so many of us continue to do this work and continue to show up.
I'll piggyback on what you were saying, Telly, is like, in being inspired by the individuals on this panel with me, and knowing that we are the stewards of like taking this work and the conversations that we're having forward, and again, you all being here as well and taking these conversations and the things that you all are learning today out into the world and having conversations with your friends, your family, hopefully over shared meals. Since we're talking about food, and community in that way, and knowing that this space creates a bubble that rises, and it's knowledge, it's power, it's access, it's privilege, it's all of those things that we're putting out into the universe and that everyone in this room takes with them and can pass on in their own way. And so I think I'm just inspired by everyone that's here. I'm inspired by this conversation and the work that each of you all are doing, and knowing that we're doing this work together, in our own ways. I think that's just so great and so powerful.
Wow. You're all gonna know that I go to therapy. Part of this is that I was a young kid and I grew up on a farm, whatever. I was alone a lot, and I spent a lot of time with myself, and I knew it was different. I didn't have somebody to look to. I didn't have the language. I didn't understand, and I went home probably a year ago, and it felt like I had come back to sit in the same spots I used to sit by the creek, because I'm from Missouri, and say to that kid, like, you kind of figure it out. You figure it out, and it's not all great, but it's okay. And I think that little part of me, to talk to Telly's experience and all of our experiences up here, that man, my team inspires me every day. They're not all queer. They are all different sorts, and most of them are cis dudes, and how they come in and respect me and care for me makes me feel really proud to have that team, and how much they love me and how much I love them. And I hope that continues to spread through the industry, because it's not all through the industry, and in many industries, not just ours. So yeah, it's the good ones. It's the good ones. There's a lot of them out there. We just gotta give them space to talk.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this whole room. I'm constantly inspired just by, like, my community in Texas, like, so deeply, like, everyone that is resilient and just, you know, like, that chooses to just get up and keep doing what they love, like, regardless of what is, like, in front or what is on the phone, you know. It's like just that relentless, like, love and passion for living, I think, is what keeps me going. Like, all the knowledge from, like, my elders, queer elders, everyone, I'm just constantly taking it all in and, like, choosing, like, love beyond everything else, and always inspired.
You all inspire me. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you all so much for sharing so much of yourselves and your stories and your wisdom. We're all lucky and better for it, for being in this space with you. And I'd like to open it up to you all for some questions. Yes.
Okay, I'm going. As someone who doesn't cook but serves, I think the ability to cook or bake a meal is close to alchemy when I witness it. And in a pre-colonial sense, it kind of is. And so I guess I want to know, if you could cast a spell with a dish you make, what is the dish? What is the spell?
So a dish that I make that is very well, not to toot my own horn, is my lasagna. And I think the spell that I would cast with that is like a love spell. And I'm thinking, like, when you were talking and posing your question, I was thinking about, like, when I cook for people, I may be, like, tired and overworked from the workday, but if I come home and I'm cooking for my roommate or something like that, and I have not said, like, I love you, that's kind of like my silent way of saying, I love you. And so, yeah, it would be lasagna, and then the spell would be love.
I totally agree. I think that cooking is super alchemical, and I think pasta is one of the greatest things that you can really, like, spend time with, knead, touch with your skin, and imbue with, like, a special force. And when I make pasta, which I got to do earlier in the week with Luna, I'm thinking about peace. I'm thinking about giving people peace. When you eat a dish of pasta, I just want you to feel so comfortable and held and at peace.
I need
I mean, I love this question, because yes, I love witchy, like, food stuff. I would say mine would be tamales, but there's, like, one time that I cooked, like, tamales, and I cooked, like, my own corn, like, and then mixed tamal, but doing it with ashes, like, adds a whole other layer, because this is, like, the oldest way people cook corn. It's like more than 10,000 years old. So you're, like, putting the ashes in the water, and you literally feel like a witch, just, like, staring in this pot, and you see, like, this, like, black portal, and then you add the corn and just changes color, and then you grind it, and you have to, like, wash out all these ashes. So tamal is made with nixtamal de ceniza, so ash masa, filled with rabbit or venison. And that for me is just like connection to the, you know, our ancestors and the afterlife and all these things. That's my spell. And I want people to feel that when I cook that.
Oh man. Part of me wanted to say meatloaf, and now I don't. I made meatloaf a lot. That was my job, was like to mash the meat as a kid because it was super cold. My mom was like, I don't want to do that. You do that. Don't forget the bran flakes. That was the special ingredient. I think, yeah, I'll go with meatloaf. I think I would want people to feel presence, to be present. I don't think that we're able to do that often. I think being present and like, you know, I think companion comes from a Latin word that means to whom you break bread with, I think. Could be telling you a lie right now, but I'm pretty sure. And I think that that's important. I think that we don't spend a lot of time being together, really being together, without our phones, without everything else that's going on. So I want this meatloaf to bring presence.
I have an answer too. I have watched my mom and dad, they like make mashed potatoes together. And I have worked on perfecting it to taste just like how they make it. And so to build off of yours, like connection of like feeling connected to my parents and the food that they make. And every time I go home to visit them, they know that I want mashed potatoes. And they always will say, well, you make it since you've been practicing. And I'm like, no, you make it. I'm in your house, I want yours. But yeah, it's a connection.
Yeah, gonna make it too.
No, you do it. Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering like how your queer values influence like the practicalities of how you work in terms of where you source ingredients, what kind of menu you have. Like queer people are the future, but our planet's on fire, so are we gonna have a future for us? Hags is the only like upscale restaurant I've ever been to, and I've been there because they have a vegan menu that doesn't feel like an afterthought. So I kind of wonder how you think about that. You mentioned this sort of like some people can go to Wegmans, but does that mean that queer people should give their money to Wegmans? So just sort of general thoughts about like intersectional practical issues.
This is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I think it's probably the most important thing that we can impact in a restaurant like Hags, and we have a direct relationship to impacting it because we have such personal sources for everything that we do. We can always strengthen our relationships, and we can ask more from the people we have strong relationships with. So a couple of months ago, I got to spend some time with a restaurant in DC called Oyster, which is very hyper sustainable, zero waste, closed loop cooking. And their chef, Rob, was very kind and gracious to host us there. His chef de cuisine is queer, and he wanted to show support for his staff by bringing in a queer restaurant. And I thought that was super cool. But we went in there with a desire to learn from them as well, because I think that it's important to consider queer futurity and imagine a world where our future queer relatives and the people that will look at our connection to our crafts today and consider them through the lens of what their life is like now. We're really lucky to have incredible queer elders that have put us on a path to have so much privilege. And obviously it needs to expand and things need to get better for queer people today, but we also need to contribute to a better queer future. And I think that we all have unique relationships to that. I think that at Hags what we do and what we've started to do is we have moved from sourcing all of our ingredients away from corporations towards personal individuals. We get our salt from a guy named David in Syracuse. I know David, I talked to David. We get our cooking oil, all of our cooking oil. Everything is cooked in this oil from a farm upstate that is helping to rewild monocropped fields. And down the line, making these decisions to change our all-purpose flour, changing our sugar, changing where we get our proteins from, if we're getting proteins at all, and building into that practice a way to turn these sources into personal relationships that are not just personal because I'm a chef and they're a grower or a farmer or a salt miner, but based in the reality that I'm a trans woman and you have to be okay with that. So we have a lot of big conversations about things that are outside the typical conversation around what kind of salt we're using, but I think that that's hopefully a blueprint for queer restaurants, chefs, cooks, people that want a through line to people that support us, that have our values in mind, to lean on in the future, and hopefully leave a world that is getting better with time and better in time for us to enjoy it.
I don't own the restaurant I work in. So I make decisions that I can make. And those decisions have started with talking with my current purveyors. I don't get to move around the money that makes our restaurant function. But I am making choices to better the restaurant, the food that I serve our people that come in and eat, and that we serve our own employees. It's a lot of conversations, it's a lot of work. And I think when I open my own restaurant, that is gonna be a huge part of it, because with dismantling like the FDA, the things that are put in place to protect us that are gone, it is more important to have conversations with, you said David, we gotta talk to each other. We gotta know where our food's coming from, and we gotta think about what's gonna happen moving forward, because other people aren't.
I think adding to that, thinking about the outsourcing that we do when we provide like vegetables, fresh produce, and fruit things to community. The Yoka Project works with a lot of, one particular queer forum that's upstate that we get all of our things from, and so I'm very meticulous in that way of being like, I don't want to like really go to a large grocer and like get the stuff that they're giving us, because then I also have to do the research and figure out who they're supporting and who they're giving money to and all that other stuff. I would rather just keep it in-house and support queer and trans farmers, because there's actually, like when you research, there's actually a lot out there that you can find, especially upstate, honestly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so you know, we get a lot of that. We're also about to start a program. We have 2 hydroponic pods that we just purchased that we are gonna try to give to a farm upstate that they can use, and so we can keep that resource going even in the wintertime. So yeah, just keeping it, you know, resource through home, because we have the ability to do it, and then that creates that future that we're thinking about.
Yeah, I love this question because it's super important, and I think it ties a lot of the intersectionalities that we have to think about. A lot of my work is revolving around working with a lot of different Native-led like organizations and individuals, farms. So I always try to work with people that are like that acknowledge the desire to repatriate the land. So people that are, working to repatriate like buffalo to Texas. The people that I have been sourcing corn for the last 7 years. It's all indigenous farmers throughout Mexico, and it's like how can we then also support like the global South, like with their efforts into just like having a better economy while not like taking too much from them. And I think a lot of like restaurants in the U.S. kind of have this like mentality of like hyper consumerism. So like a lot of the restaurants that I've worked with that are sourcing corn, they're sourcing like in giant quantities, and it's like how can we keep up the demand? So for me, it's been like dismantling also what like a restaurant looks like, and do we have to be actually serving this many people all the time, and like wasting this much food, or can we keep things like in a more community-centered base, and like how can we have this more direct impact? So I think it's something that I think we constantly have to be thinking about, and because our community holds us to that responsibility.
Thank you all. One more question, and then we're all going to be milling about if you have other questions for us. Or them, really. Any, yeah.
I wonder if you have any thoughts about how to present your authentic self. Restaurants can be a stage. You learn in a restaurant how to perform for people, whether that's front of house, performing for guests, or back of house, the machismo culture that you've talked about. I've performed both of those quite a lot in my life. And transitioning, meaning like you're not really able to pretend anymore. How do you be yourself when you have like been in this environment of performance your whole life?
This question feels very personal because I had to when I started cooking, I hadn't started medically transitioning. I started medically transitioning several years ago, while still working in kitchens, still working in a Mexican restaurant with a lot of Mexican men and all, very religious women and all these different layers, and it's it was very scary. It's not an easy thing to have to navigate, and even though there was some cis gay cooks or something, it still didn't feel like I could just fully dive in there. So for me, it felt just having to take a pause and find somewhere that I could feel more safe in, even if it wasn't the thing that was what I wanted to do creatively. It's just I had to prioritize my own mental health and my own safety, and so having that freedom to do that at my own pace. But it's a very unique journey, I think, to anyone that has to navigate that.
Yeah, I started medically transitioning. I've been in the industry for, I started transitioning in 2020. I actually started taking care of myself and prioritizing doing it because I had lost the relationship because of wanting to transition. My family was upset about it. And I was an out lesbian, and the chef that I currently work with now, I was working for then. And coming back to work with her, she was very open and supportive, but there's a lot of uncomfortable conversations to teaching, and not even just to people that I knew before all of this, but new people, employees that I was a manager over. Getting facial hair was difficult, and especially working with a lot of Latinx people, I could feel the difference in how they saw me. It took conversations and just kind of moving forward and being more accepting of myself, and also finding support within that, like Luna is saying, deciding when to walk away, and finding the right people to be around, and also pushing myself to be open and be received in a different way than having walls up. I think I'll say a good portion of the time people will surprise you. Not always, but yeah, having your guard up too, it's hard whenever you're a queer person and you're trying to navigate transitioning. But yeah, being more open and staying authentic and walking away when you know it's time.
I love the authenticity piece that you spoke of, because I think that's so important. And I'm thinking about just, some of the corporations or businesses that come to try and work with us. I think this may shock you all when I say this. I would probably hear an audible gasp, but Chick-fil-A reaches out. And they've been on my heels for the last 2 years about accepting their money or accepting food donations from them. And I'm just no, I don't want it. I don't. But a lot of that is my authenticity too, showing up and being as a queer and trans person, no, I don't want your money, and I'm not gonna give your money to my community that I'm serving either. But being very choosy in that way, and that choosiness being rooted in my identity that then trickles down to the community that not only I represent, but that I serve as well. is important in that way. So yeah.
Yeah, I think y'all three captured it so perfectly. I don't know that there's much I can contribute that would be different, but I think that a lot of what needs to come first is a realization that you deserve so much and you deserve everything, and whatever authentic means to you, like, you deserve to be that in every room that you walk into. And if anybody's taking that away from you, you have the power to decide if you're gonna give this patience, or if you're going to walk out of that room, or if you're going to call your community to gather around you and, you know, kick the shit out of them. You get to that place by first spending a lot of time with yourself and realizing that you have that value. Like, you deserve that. You deserve that power.
What a beautiful note to conclude this portion of the evening. Thank you all so much for sharing, again, so much of your heart and your stories. And thank you all for being here and asking your questions, laughing at my jokes. Again, we'll be hanging around for a little bit if you want to come say hi. But thank you all, and thank you to Museum of Food and Drink for having us. You're dismissed.
Can I get a picture of you guys together? Thank you.
Oh, sitting or standing?
Whatever you guys prefer. Thank you.
Around the black and green card.